Hey y'all, it's Laura and welcome to day 4 of my Scraptember Video a Day Marathon. This is a collaboration with the Scrappy Sisters and Christy's Beautiful Life with special guest Virginia Walker, along with a lovely group of ladies joining in, and all linked in the description below. So today's prompt is white background, so of course we are going to start with a white background, and a piece of cardstock does the job. I also have a sketch at the very beginning of the video you may have seen that had a whole bunch of circles, and that is what we're using as the basis for this layout. I am using my September stash kit and using both the prompt and the sketch on this one. So to get started, I've done a little prep work off camera. I have some circle dies that have a stitching design to them, and so I've gone ahead and used them to cut out my photos and my little rings there that I'm going to use in the place of what looks like cut files on the layout. So these are going to be the replacement for cut files. I am just quite simply taping down my photo and then gluing the ring around the outside of it, and then I'll cut it out so it's one solid piece. It makes it a little easier to move around the layout, and I'm all for making things easier. In theory. It's a couple extra steps in the process, but I find it a little bit more flexible when I go to work on the actual layout design to have solid pieces that I can move around easily and not be trying to stick them and guess. So I am using a piece of cardstock as the backing because that won't really show through the photo or any cracks in the stitching. So I don't worry about that too much. Just stick down the photo, grab the little ring, and then glue it down around the outside just like a frame. Now in this case, I could have cut my photos a little bit bigger so that they would fit perfectly inside the frame and not have to do this extra step and use this extra piece of cardstock. However, I was in a hurry and did not think of that until just now. So that absolutely did not happen. Now this video is a little bit longer because there were some extra steps involved. I don't normally spend quite this much time prepping my background, especially when I'd already done the hard part of all the die cutting. But this particular layout stumped me just a little because of the way it's set up in the sketch, and it uses both stars and circles, which is fine. I love geometric shapes, but it used them in kind of an awkward way in my mind, and so I had to try to make it work in my head first. So as I'm gluing, as I'm taping, as I'm creating these solid pieces that I can use to move around my page, I am thinking to myself and kind of glancing at the sketch, kind of preparing myself for how I'm going to set this up. So keep that in mind when you look at a sketch. Is it what you want to do, or do you need to modify it slightly? Quite often, I will just make a slight modification in the sketch and it makes it so much easier for me to use. So don't be afraid to do that because the sketches are there for inspiration. They're not intended to intimidate you. They're supposed to give you an optional boost in inspiration so that you can just dive right into the layout. Now I have decided to back some of these circles with pattern paper from my September stash kit, and this one is from the Simple Stories School Life collection, which is about half of the kit. The kit has a lot of different brands in it, but it seems like I pulled mainly from the Simple Stories collection and the Bella Boulevard Pop Quiz. I've got a little bit of both, and I think it's a really, really fun kit to play with. I'm already really enjoying it, and you're going to see a mix of things this month as I tried not to just use the same collection or the same kit all month long. Every single day. That would have gotten rather tedious for me and probably for you as well to watch. So I kind of mixed it up. I did several videos ahead of time using Cocoa Vanilla collections, which is my favorite, and I was motivated to use them. And now I'm diving into my stash kit for the rest of the videos. So you will see a mix and match of different collections and kits that I pull in to use. A lot of stash mostly because I do create a lot of stash kits. And I really enjoy playing with my stash. I have cultivated it to a point where it's only the things I love, and so digging into it is very satisfying and exciting, and I really enjoy it. And so I greatly encourage you to do the same to your stash, because if you're finding that you're having to dig deep to find the things you really want, and there's just so much stuff that you can't get to the things that you love easily, definitely go check out my how and when to purge video, and it has tons and tons of tips and ideas and examples for you to get started on your own stash and just make things a whole lot easier for yourself. Now I had these two circles that were left over once the die cutting was done. So the way I die cut is I took the largest circle and die cut it in white cardstock. I then took the center out and die cut in a smaller size and on down to you get this small circle, white circle at the end. So then I used that white circle to back onto some cardstock, some pattern paper, and so that gave me an extra circle that was essentially a punched shape, but I didn't want to waste the white cardstock. I just went ahead and propped it up onto that pattern paper. Now using one of the smaller circles as a guide, I'm going to go ahead and cut apart from the Simple Stories collection to get somewhat of a title. I thought at first I was going to use it as a title, and then I end up bringing in titles later. So it's an additional title. It's a subtitle, and it's going to hang out over here to the right. So in the original sketch, there is a large cascade of circles and stars coming down this left side, and your photos are meant to be held there as well. And then on the right side, there is a much smaller cluster that has the journaling. And so that's really what I'm focusing on. Large scattering on the left, a small cluster on the right. Now that cluster on the right seems to grow a little more than I expected it to, and I did add some bits and pieces at the top and the bottom just to give it a little bit more of a filled in look, because I don't like having big open gaps on my page, and that felt like where we were getting. I don't like getting stuck in that place. So now I have gone off the edges with several of my circles. That just creates a look of continuity through the whole layout. There's no starts and stops that can make it look a bit awkward. So instead I went off the edges with several of my circles. Now here is the gorgeous, gorgeous glitter paper that we have brought into the September kit. And I've had a lot of requests for how to use glitter paper. So this is one way that I particularly enjoy. It's the main way that I use glitter paper, and that's to punch it. I am using a Fiskars really thick punch. That's the whole purpose of it, is to punch out really thick things like chipboard, glitter paper, anything really that's a little bit thicker than normal paper. You can chop out with those lovely star shapes. So I'm going to add those to my yellow pattern paper circles, and then I'll bring in a few extra little bits and pieces, particularly this little leftover cut apart here to the right. I went ahead and punched a few of the shapes out of that scrap as well, some little small stars to add to my clusters as well, just for a little bit of fun, little pop of color with this very, very white background. Now I can already tell that I'm going to have to come in pretty heavy with my embellishing on this one because there is so much open white space, and I'm just not a huge fan of that on a layout. I do have a tendency to want to fill the layout, and because I've cut my photos into circles, they're not really taking up a lot of space, and so they do have a presence on the layout because I've clustered them together, but they're not taking up a ton of space, and they're leaving a lot of white behind. And in that blank open space, I'm going to go ahead and fill it in with a number of things, with puffy stickers, with word phrases, with epoxy flare, and some thicker stars as well. And so that bit of scattering or creating little clusters around my photos especially really helped the layout feel a bit more finished. You could stop at this point. You could call this done. But for me, this is incredibly simple and under-embellished, and that's just really not my style. Now I have decided to go ahead and outline all of the circles just to give them a little bit of depth. This adds what looks like a shadow underneath all of the circles, and so it gives them more of a 3D look and helps them pop off of the page. So definitely something as simple as outlining can add so much detail to your layout. So definitely give that a try as well. Now I have drawn in my journaling lines over here on the right, and I've added those in before I do my splattering because quite often I'll start splattering and not have left space for my journaling, and then I have to try to fit it in around the splattering, which is always a bit tricky. Now I had one little extra star here and I was determined to get it on the layout, so I just tucked it in here at the bottom of my journaling. Now here are some Puffy Stars from Hip Kit Club, and these are the ones I'm going to scatter around my photos, around my different clusters, mostly in this white space in the center. I'm focusing largely on the black stars, simply because there is already some bright colors and I don't want to compete. This is just simply an add-on. So sticking to a neutral color like black helps to bring some contrast to that white background without distracting from the bits and pieces that are already present on the layout. Now, I did use quite a few of these Puffy Stars, but there's still plenty left. This, however, was the highlight of the layout. I pulled out these Simple Stories foam words and phrases and icons, and they're very similar to Thickers, but they're Simple Stories brand. So I'm going to use this pop quiz as a title and pull up the star that just happened to be underneath of it and add it up here at the top. That is not what the sketch has, but at this point I've kind of abandoned the sketch. I follow it to a point, but when I'm starting to feel very comfortable with the design, I generally go off on my own and embellish however I feel like. So I brought in a little speech bubble, but I cut off the little arrow thing at the bottom because I don't actually like speech bubbles terribly much. I just think they tend to be a little bit intrusive on photos, and so I just cut it into a circle. And then I'm going to pull out a bunch of these little school themed bits and pieces. There are some paper clips and some thumbtack things that I'm playing with, and a pencil, all that stuff, and just kind of spread them around the page, add them to my clusters to give them a little dimension, a little pop of something interesting. Now, I haven't mentioned to you yet what these photos are about. These are 3 photos from a homeschool history and science fair that was hosted by a local group, and we decided to have our kids participate. So my older 2 kids created trifold presentations on big poster boards about either a history or a science topic of their choice. So my son decided to do ancient Greece, which was his absolute fascination at the time. He can list off gods and goddesses like you would not believe. Even now, this was 4 years ago and he can still do it. So he had a real passion for that particular time period and decided to showcase it not only in photos and in printed words on his board, but also with a diorama that was set up in front of the board. And I thought that was a pretty cool addition. So now that I've added all of those beautiful foam embellishments, I'm going to come in with some word phrases from the 12 by 12 sticker sheet and add those here, there, and everywhere because I'm a wordy person and I need all the words on the page. It's just how I roll. These are some epoxy flair that specifically say homeschool on them, so I figured this was a good opportunity to go ahead and use them, and then adding in my controlled splatter with Nuvo drops everywhere all around my clusters, followed by my Heidi Swap Color Shine for some uncontrolled splatter. And then we will be complete. This was such a fun layout to do, and I hope you have enjoyed it. Please let me know what you think in the comments below, and be sure to check out all of the amazing creations everyone's making for this Scraptember and 30 Days of Sketches marathon, and I hope you will come back tomorrow and every other day this month to get a little bit more scrappy inspiration. That's it for me. I hope you've had a lovely day. Until next time, bye y'all.